3 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of his ship and watched as humanity prepared for war. The sight still amazed him. Hundreds of human ships floated in space around them, from tiny scout vessels to massive colony ships that had been converted into battleships. Each ship carried people who had learned the truth about the cycles, about the shepherds, about their species' real history. "Status report," Jake called to his crew. "All 7 facilities have been activated," Lisa reported from her station. "The sleepers are awake and sharing their knowledge with our scientists." "Defense. Grid construction is ahead of schedule," added Tony. "The old human. Technology is incredible once you know how to use it." Jake nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were still missing something. The sleepers from the other facilities had been exactly what Elena warned him about. Brilliant, powerful, but cold as machines. They understood war and technology, but they had forgotten what it felt like to hope, to dream, to laugh with friends. "Elena, are the shepherds still coming?" Jake asked. Elena stood at the front of the bridge, her cosmic eyes focused on realities beyond normal space. Over the past months, she had taught a dozen other humans to see as she did, creating a network of watchers who could track the shepherds' movements. "Yes," she said. 5 days, maybe 6. They're moving faster than I expected. I think they're more worried about us than they've ever been about any previous human resistance." "Good," said Maria from the pilot's seat. "Let them worry." Through the main screen, Jake could see one of the most incredible sights in human history. The combined fleet of humanity wasn't just ships and weapons. It was also a collection of technologies from 12 different cycles of human civilization, all working together for the first time. Energy shields that could bend light itself. Weapons that fired concentrated gravity. Ships that could step between dimensions to avoid attacks. And at the center of it all, the awakened humans. Men and women who had learned to exist partially in the higher dimensions where the shepherds lived. But Jake's favorite part was something much simpler. Scattered throughout the fleet were ordinary humans doing ordinary human things. Families from the colony worlds, teachers and farmers and artists who had volunteered to help in any way they could. They couldn't fight cosmic beings with their bare hands, but they reminded everyone else what they were fighting for. "Incoming message from Earth Command," Tony announced. The main screen changed to show Admiral Sarah Kane, the leader of Earth's space forces. Jake had known her for years, but she looked like she had aged a decade in the past 3 months. "Jake," she said, "our deep space sensors are picking up the shepherds. They're huge. Each one is the size of a small moon." "We expected that," Jake replied. "Elena warned us they exist on a scale we can barely understand. Are you sure about this plan? Even with all the technology you've recovered, we're still just humans fighting gods." Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Lisa, studying readings from sensors that could see across dimensions. Tony, coordinating with engineers who were installing weapons from 5 different eras of human science. Maria, preparing to pilot their ship through battles in multiple realities at once. Sarah, what makes humans special isn't that we're the strongest or the smartest species in the universe, Jake said. It's that we never know when to quit. The shepherds are about to learn why. That's more important than being gods, Elena spoke without turning away from her cosmic observations. They're here. Space around the human fleet suddenly filled with light. Not the clean light of stars, but something that hurt to look at directly. Shapes began to appear. Vast creatures made of energy and mathematics. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. The shepherds had arrived. Jake felt his heart hammering as he looked at beings that had controlled humanity's destiny for thousands of years. Each shepherd was different, but they all shared the same sense of vast ancient intelligence. These were creatures that remembered the birth of galaxies and had watched civilizations rise and fall across the entire universe. "All ships, this is Captain Morrison," Jake broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to prove that humanity is ready to choose its own future." "Incoming transmission," Tony reported. It's from the shepherds." The voice that spoke was like nothing Jake had ever heard. It came from everywhere at once and seemed to speak directly inside his mind. "Small humans," the shepherd said. "You have learned to see beyond your limitations. This is unexpected. But you must understand, you are still children playing with forces you cannot comprehend. Submit to reset and we will be merciful." Elena finally turned from her observations. Her cosmic eyes blazed with power as she prepared to speak for all humanity. "We are Elena Voss of the human species," she said, her voice carrying across space through dimensions the shepherds could hear. "We reject your authority over us. We choose our own path among the stars." "You choose chaos and destruction," the shepherd replied. "Every species that refuses our guidance destroys itself and others. We have seen it countless times." "But you've never seen it with humans," Jake found himself saying, "because you never gave us the chance to try. The human species is too dangerous, too curious, too willing to break the laws that keep reality stable." Elena smiled, and Jake could feel her gathering power from the other awakened humans throughout the fleet. "That's exactly why we'll succeed where others failed," she said. The battle that followed wasn't like anything Jake had imagined. It wasn't ships shooting at each other with lasers and missiles. Instead, it was a war fought across multiple dimensions, with weapons made of pure mathematics and shields built from crystallized time. The awakened humans led the fight. Their minds expanded beyond normal human limits to engage the shepherds on their own level. But the ordinary humans played a crucial role too. While the cosmic battle raged in higher dimensions, they kept the ships running, the communications working, the fleet united. For hours, the outcome remained uncertain. The shepherds were incredibly powerful, and they had fought wars across the universe for billions of years. But they had never faced anything like humanity, a species that grew stronger when challenged, that found new solutions when old ones failed, that refused to accept defeat even when victory seemed impossible. The turning point came when Jake realized something the shepherds didn't understand about humans. "Elena," he shouted across the bridge as another wave of cosmic energy rocked their ship. "They think we're trying to replace them." Elena paused in her mental battle with one of the shepherds. "What do you mean?" "They're afraid we'll become like them, cosmic shepherds controlling other species." "But that's not what humans do." Understanding flashed in Elena's cosmic eyes. She reached out through the dimensions to speak not just to the shepherds but to the entire human fleet. "Listen," she broadcast to everyone. "Show them what we really want." Across the fleet, humans began transmitting not weapons or threats but dreams. Children's drawings of spaceships exploring new worlds, love songs written by poets on colony planets, videos of human families laughing together, mathematical equations that described new ways to understand the universe. The shepherds paused in their attack, confused by what they were seeing. "You fight for the right to explore," one of them said, sounding puzzled, "not to conquer." "We fight for the right to choose," Jake replied. "To make our own mistakes and learn from them. To grow and change and become whatever we decide to become. And if you choose wrongly, if you threaten other species, other realities," Elena's voice carried the weight of cosmic truth, "then we'll face the consequences and find a way to fix what we broke. Because that's what humans do. We don't give up. We don't stay the same. And we don't let others make our choices for us." The shepherds were quiet for a long time. Jake could feel them communicating with each other in ways human minds couldn't understand, debating across dimensions about what to do with this strange species that refused to be shepherded. Finally, their leader spoke. "You are not like the others we have guided. Most species, when they gain power, seek to use it over others. You seek to use it to explore and create and grow." "Because we're human," Jake said simply. "It's what we do." "Very well," the shepherd said. "We will end the cycles. But know this, if humanity ever threatens the stability of reality itself, we will return." "And if that day comes," Elena replied, "we'll find a way to talk about it instead of fighting." The shepherds began to fade from normal space, returning to the higher dimensions where they existed. "Good luck, young species," their leader said. "Try not to break the universe." As the cosmic beings vanished, the human fleet erupted in cheers that could be heard across dozens of worlds. They had done it. They had broken free from the cycle that had trapped humanity for millennia. Jake slumped in his captain's chair, exhausted but happy. Around him, his crew was celebrating, hugging each other and laughing with relief. Jake helped Velnara move to a more comfortable position against the curved wall of her crashed ship. The sound of search aircraft had faded, but he knew it was only temporary. Both sides would be back soon and in greater numbers. "Tell me about your armor," Jake said, examining the damaged systems carefully. "How does it work?" Velnara watched him with curious eyes. "It is not like your human machines. We do not build our armor, we grow it," Jake looked up from his scanner. Grow it? When a Zephyrian child reaches their 5th year, they are given a small crystal seed. Velnara touched a spot near her shoulder, where a smaller crystal glowed softly. The crystal grows with us, learning from us, becoming part of us. By the time we reach adulthood, it knows our thoughts, our fears, our dreams. Jake studied the intricate patterns in her armor. Now that he looked closer, he could see they were not carved or etched. They seemed to flow naturally, like veins in a leaf or rivers on a map. The armor forms around the crystals over many years. Velnara continued. It protects us, but more than that, it makes us stronger, faster, better able to survive in battle. A fully bonded warrior can sense danger before it happens, move faster than the eye can follow. How? Jake asked, his engineer mind fascinated. Velnara was quiet for a moment. Your people see consciousness as something that exists only in the brain, yes? We believe consciousness can exist in other forms. The crystals become a second mind, connected to ours but separate. They process information we cannot, warn us of things we might miss. Jake nodded slowly, like an advanced computer system, but biological. More than biological, spiritual. Velnara's voice grew softer. The heartstone in my chest contains fragments of every important moment in my life. My first successful hunt, the day I became queen, the faces of my fallen warriors. When it dies, those memories die with it. Jake examined his scanner readings again. The energy patterns were unlike anything in human technology, but there were similarities to their basic cybernetic systems. What happens if the heartstone is damaged? What you see happening to me now. The armor fails. The connection breaks. The warrior becomes ordinary. She said the last word as if it tasted bitter. In battle, ordinary means dead. Outside, Jake could hear Ben and the others setting up a defensive perimeter. They were good soldiers, but they would not hold off a serious Zephyrian assault for long. Time was running out. Velnara, Jake said carefully, I might be able to help, but I need to understand more. How does the heartstone connect to your nervous system? She looked at him with surprise. You think you can repair sacred technology with your crude human methods? Maybe not repair, Jake admitted, but possibly stabilize. Buy you time. Velnara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. You are not what I expected from a human warrior. I'm not really a warrior. I'm an engineer. I solve problems. And you see my dying heartstone as a problem to solve? Jake met her violet eyes. I see a person who is going to lose everything that makes them who they are. Yeah, I call that a problem worth solving. Something changed in Velnara's expression. The suspicion was still there, but mixed with something else. Hope, maybe. Or curiosity. Very well, she said. I will tell you what I can. But understand, some knowledge is too sacred to share with outsiders. For the next hour, Velnara explained the basic principles of Zephyrian biotechnology. Their crystals were grown in sacred gardens, exposed to specific combinations of radiation and minerals. The growing process took decades and was guided by experienced technicians who were part engineer, part priest. The crystals formed neural pathways similar to human brain tissue, but much more efficient. They could store vast amounts of information and process it at incredible speeds. More importantly, they could interface directly with Zephyrian nervous systems through microscopic filaments that grew throughout the warrior's body. Jake listened carefully, asking technical questions when he could. The more he learned, the more amazed he became. Human cybernetic technology was crude by comparison, but it operated on some of the same principles: bioneural interfaces, memory storage in crystal matrices, direct nervous system connections. The damage to your heartstone, Jake said finally. It's not just physical, is it? The neural pathways are breaking down. Velnara nodded grimly. The crash severed many of the connections. Even if the crystal could be repaired, I might never be able to reconnect fully. Jake studied his scanner readings one more time. An idea was forming in his mind, but it was crazy, dangerous, probably impossible. What if, he said slowly, we didn't try to repair the existing connections? What if we created new ones? New ones? How? Jake touched the cybernetic interface port behind his ear. All human soldiers had them. Basic connections that allowed them to link with their equipment and vehicles. Human neural interfaces are simple, but they're compatible with a wide range of systems. If I could create a bridge between your heartstone and a human interface, Velnara stared at him. You would link your mind to my heartstone? Temporarily? Just long enough to stabilize the system and maybe repair some of the damaged pathways. That is impossible. Humans do not have the spiritual capacity to bond with sacred crystals. Maybe not the spiritual capacity, Jake agreed, but we might have the technical capacity. Before Velnara could respond, Ben's voice crackled over Jake's communicator. Jake, we've got incoming. Multiple Zephyrian aircraft about 10 minutes out. We need to move. Jake looked at Velnara. Your people are coming. As are yours, I assume. She tried to stand but winced in pain. The battle will be fierce. Many will die. Jake made a decision that surprised even him. Come with us. What? You said yourself. Without your armor working, you're just ordinary. You won't survive another battle. Come with us, let me try to help you, and maybe we can prevent some of that dying. Velnara studied his face for a long moment. Why would you risk your life for an enemy? Jake thought about all the briefings he had attended, all the propaganda about Zephyrian savagery and human superiority. Then he looked at Velnara, injured, afraid of losing her identity but still willing to face death with dignity. Maybe, he said quietly. We're not really enemies. Maybe we just never tried to understand each other. The sound of approaching aircraft was getting louder. Soon both forces would converge on this canyon, and the killing would begin again. Velnara closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with decision. Very well, Jake Morrison. I will trust you with my life. But know this, if you betray that trust, I will find a way to make you regret it, even without my armor. Jake smiled. Fair enough. But I don't plan on betraying anyone. As he helped her to her feet, Jake wondered what he was getting himself into. He was about to attempt something that violated every regulation in the book, possibly something that had never been tried before. But looking at Velnara's failing heartstone, he knew he had to try. The abandoned mining station sat in a narrow valley 3 kilometers from the crash site. Jake and his squad had used it as a temporary shelter before, and its thick walls would hide their energy signatures from aerial scans. Ben was not happy about bringing a Zephyrian prisoner there, but he trusted Jake's judgment. This is insane, Ben muttered as they helped Velnara into the main building. If Command finds out we're harboring an enemy officer, then we better make sure this works, Jake replied, setting up his equipment in what used to be the station's communication center. Velnara sat carefully on a supply crate, her armor's glow growing dimmer by the hour. The other soldiers kept their weapons ready, but seemed more curious than hostile. Up close, she was clearly not the savage monster their training had described. Jake, she said quietly, there is something you must understand before you attempt this. The Heartstone does not just contain memories. It contains what you might call the essence of who I am. If something goes wrong, what kind of wrong? Jake asked, connecting cables to his portable neural interface. You could lose your mind, or I could lose mine, or we both could become something different. Jake paused in his work. Different how? Velnara struggled to find the right words. There are legends among my people of warriors whose heartstones were damaged in battle. Some recovered fully. Others became changed. They could no longer relate to other Zephyrians. They saw the world differently, thought differently. They were exiled because they no longer fit with our society. And you're worried the same thing could happen to me, to both of us. Neural connection is not like your human machines. Once minds touch, they are never quite the same. Jake considered this. Outside, he could hear the distant rumble of aircraft engines. Both armies were searching for them, and it was only a matter of time before they were found. Velnara's heartstone was failing rapidly. In a few hours, it would die completely. I understand the risks, Jake said, but doing nothing is also a choice, and it's not a good one. Velnara nodded slowly. Then let us begin. But first, you must understand what you will experience. She guided Jake to sit facing her, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns in her dying armor. When you connect to the Heartstone, you will see my memories. Not just images. You will experience them as if they were your own. You will feel my emotions, my pain, my joys, and you'll experience mine. Perhaps the connection works both ways. I will see your memories, understand your thoughts and feelings. There will be no privacy between us, no secrets. Jake thought about this. His memories were not particularly dramatic. Growing up on Earth's industrial colonies, studying engineering, volunteering for the colonial military. But there were private moments, personal failures, and triumphs he had never shared with anyone. Are you ready? Velnara asked. Jake activated his neural interface and picked up the connection cable. It was a standard military interface designed to link with vehicles and weapon systems. He had never used it to connect with another living being. "Ready," he said. Velnara placed her hand over her heartstone. The crystal pulsed weakly, responding to her touch. "Place your hand over mine. When I open the connection, do not fight what you see. Let the memories flow through you without trying to control them." Jake placed his hand on top of hers. The crystal felt warm, almost alive. He could feel a faint vibration like a heartbeat. "Now," Velnara whispered. Jake activated his interface and connected it to the heartstone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into sensation. He was 5 years old, standing in a garden of impossible beauty. Crystal trees rose around him, their branches singing in harmony. An older Zephyrian knelt before him, placing a small glowing seed in his palm. "This is your heartstone," she said. "Guard it well, for it will guard you." The memory shifted. Now he was 15, training with other young warriors. The heartstone had grown larger, embedded in a simple breastplate. He could feel its presence in his mind, a second voice that offered advice and warnings. During combat practice, it helped him anticipate his opponent's moves, react faster than thought. Another shift. He was 23, kneeling before the Council of Queens. The ceremony was solemn and beautiful. The heartstone had grown into its full size, connected to an intricate armor system that flowed like liquid metal. He felt the moment of complete bonding, warrior and stone becoming one consciousness with two aspects. But mixed with Velnara's memories, Jake began to see his own experiences through her perspective. She witnessed his childhood on the industrial colony of Titan 7, saw the polluted skies and overcrowded cities. She felt his wonder when he first understood how machines worked, his joy at solving complex engineering problems. She saw his memories of Earth before the Exodus, a dying world where humanity faced extinction. The desperate search for new worlds, the conflicts that arose when they found planets already inhabited. Through Jake's eyes, she understood why humans seemed so aggressive, so willing to take what they needed to survive. The connection deepened. Jake experienced Velnara's first battle as a young warrior, felt her grief when her mentor died protecting their sacred sites. He understood why Zephyrians fought so fiercely. They were not just defending territory, but protecting places and objects that contained the spiritual essence of their culture. At the same time, Velnara saw the human side of the conflict. Jake's memories showed her families fleeing dying worlds, children who would starve if new colonies failed. She witnessed human soldiers crying over fallen comrades, felt their fear and determination to protect their loved ones. The technical aspects of the connection began to stabilize. Jake's cybernetic interface was crude compared to Zephyrian biotechnology, but it was compatible enough to create a bridge. The failing neural pathways in Velnara's heartstone began to route through Jake's systems, using his brain as a backup processor. "It's working," Jake said, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. He could feel Velnara's presence in his mind, her thoughts mixing with his own. "Yes," Velnara replied, "but look at what else is happening." Jake opened his eyes and looked down at their joined hands. The heartstone was glowing brighter, but the light had changed. Instead of the pure blue of Zephyrian crystals, it now showed swirls of blue and gold, a color neither species had seen before. "We are becoming something new," Velnara said. Wonder in her voice, Jake could feel it too. The connection was not just stabilizing her failing systems, it was creating a hybrid network that combined human analytical thinking with Zephyrian intuitive processing. His mind felt expanded, capable of perceiving patterns and connections he had never noticed before. But the greatest change was in how they saw each other's people. Through shared memories, the war looked completely different. Instead of good versus evil, they saw two species driven by fear and misunderstanding, fighting over resources they could potentially share. "Jake," Ben's voice crackled over the communicator. "We've got multiple contacts approaching, both human and Zephyrian forces converging on our position." 8 to 15 minutes, Jake looked at Velnara. Her armor was functioning again, powered by their hybrid connection. But more than that, her eyes held understanding that had not been there before. "They will see us as traitors," she said quietly. "Both sides," Jake agreed. "What do we do?" Jake felt the combined processing power of human logic and Zephyrian intuition working on the problem. The solution that emerged was audacious, dangerous, and possibly the only way to prevent a massacre. "We show them what we've learned," he said. "We make them understand what this war really is." Velnara smiled, and Jake realized he was smiling too. They had work to do. The first aircraft appeared over the ridge as Jake and Velnara prepared for what might be their final act. Ben and his squad had taken defensive positions around the mining station, but they all knew it was hopeless. The approaching forces were too numerous, too well armed. "Jake, we need to move," Ben called out. "I count at least 6 Zephyrian fighters and 4 of ours. When they start shooting at each other, this whole valley is going to become a kill zone." Jake looked at Velnara. Their neural connection had stabilized, but it was fragile. Breaking it now could damage both their minds permanently. Yet staying connected meant they would face the coming battle as a hybrid consciousness that neither side would understand or trust. "There is another way," Velnara said, her thoughts flowing directly into Jake's mind. "The Heartstone can do more than store memories. It can share them." Jake understood immediately. Zephyrian crystals could project memories and experiences to other Zephyrians during important ceremonies. Combined with human communication technology, they might be able to broadcast their shared understanding to both armies. "You're talking about forced telepathy," Jake said, "making them experience our memories whether they want to or not. It is the only way to make them understand quickly enough to prevent bloodshed." Jake checked his equipment. The mining station's old communication array was still functional, though outdated. With modifications, it might be able to amplify and broadcast the Heartstone's projections on frequencies both species could receive. "Ben," Jake called out, "I need you to trust me one more time." "What are you planning?" Ben asked, but he was already moving toward Jake's position. "We're going to end this war, but first I need to modify the communication array." Ben looked at Jake and Velnara, still connected by cables and glowing crystals. "This has something to do with your alien friend, doesn't it?" "She's not just my alien friend anymore," Jake said. "She's part of me now, and I'm part of her. We've seen what this war really is, Ben. We've felt it from both sides." The aircraft were getting closer. Jake could hear the high whine of charging weapons systems. Soon, they would open fire on each other, and anyone caught in between would die. Working frantically, Jake rerouted power from the station's emergency systems to boost the communication array. Velnara guided him through the technical requirements for memory projection, her knowledge combining with his engineering skills. "Jake," Ben said urgently, "they're locking weapons. Whatever you're going to do, do it now." Jake activated the modified array. The Heartstone's glow intensified, fed by the station's power core. He could feel Velnara's consciousness expanding, reaching out through the crystal matrix to touch every mind within range. "Now," Jake said. The projection hit both fleets simultaneously. Every pilot, every soldier, every commander suddenly found themselves experiencing Jake and Velnara's shared memories. Captain Lisa Hayes, leading the human squadron, suddenly saw through Zephyrian eyes as human colonists destroyed a sacred memorial grove. She felt the spiritual anguish of watching centuries of ancestral memory burned away for farmland. She experienced the rage and grief that drove Zephyrians to their first attacks on human settlements. War Commander Zeth Kara, commanding the Zephyrian forces, found himself experiencing human memories of Earth's death. He felt the desperation of parents watching their children starve on a poisoned world. He understood the fear that drove humans to expand aggressively, taking any world that could support life. Both commanders experienced the moment when Jake first found Velnara, the choice to help rather than harm, to understand rather than destroy. They felt the growing connection between two very different minds, the realization that their species were not so different after all. The projection lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. When it ended, the valley was silent except for the hum of hovering aircraft. Jake collapsed, drained by the effort. Velnara caught him, her armor's enhanced strength supporting them both. The Heartstone's glow was steady now, powered by their hybrid connection but no longer threatening to fail. "Did it work?" Jake asked weakly. His answer came over the communication channel. Lisa Hayes' voice was shaken, uncertain. "All units, hold fire. Repeat, hold fire until further notice." A moment later, Zeth Kara's voice followed. "Zephyrian forces, weapons down. There will be no battle here today." Ben helped Jake to his feet. "What did you do to them?" "We showed them the truth," Velnara answered. Sometimes understanding hurts more than ignorance. The aircraft began landing in the valley, human and Zephyrian forces maintaining careful distance from each other. Jake could see confusion and anger on many faces, but also something else. The beginning of understanding. Lisa Hayes approached first, her weapon lowered but ready. She was a career military officer, trained to see Zephyrians as inhuman enemies. Now she looked at Velnara with new eyes. "Is it true?" she asked Jake. "What I saw in those memories, is that really why they fight us?" "It's part of it," Jake replied. "Just like our reasons for fighting them are only part of the story." Zethkara arrived with a small escort, his ornate armor marking him as high-ranking nobility. He studied Jake and Velnara with obvious fascination, particularly their still active neural connection. "You have bonded with a human," he said to Velnara in their own language. "This is forbidden by every law of our people. I have learned that some laws must be broken to serve a greater good," Velnara replied calmly. "And what greater good is that?" Jake stepped forward, though he still needed Velnara's support to stand. "Peace, understanding, an end to killing each other over things we could share." Lisa Hayes laughed bitterly. "Share? They've been trying to wipe us out for 3 years, and you have been destroying our sacred sites for just as long," Zethkara replied coldly. "Because we didn't know they were sacred," Jake said. "And you didn't know we were refugees from a dying world. We've been fighting symptoms instead of solving the real problem." Velnara activated a holographic display from her armor, showing star maps and resource distribution charts. "Your species needs worlds to colonize. Ours needs to preserve sacred sites and maintain spiritual balance. These needs are not incompatible." The display changed, showing potential solutions. Shared worlds with protected zones. Human engineering helping preserve Zephyrian sacred sites. Zephyrian biotechnology helping humans terraform worlds more efficiently. "It could work," Lisa said slowly. "But after 3 years of war, how do we get our people to trust each other?" Jake looked at Velnara, their minds still connected. "The same way we did. One person at a time, one understanding at a time." Zethkara studied the holographic displays. "You propose to create more hybrid bonds like yours?" "Not exactly," Velnara said. "Our connection was born of desperation and accident. But we could create controlled exchanges. Volunteers from both species learning to understand each other through direct neural interface." "It's dangerous," Jake admitted. "We don't know all the long-term effects. But it works." Lisa and Zethkara looked at each other, years of hatred and mistrust warring with the new understanding Jake and Velnara had forced them to experience. "This will have to go to the highest levels," Lisa said finally. "Both governments will need to approve any kind of formal contact." "Our people will not easily accept this," Zethkara agreed. "There will be those who call for your execution as traitors to your species." Jake nodded. "We know. But someone has to take the first step." As the sun set over the mining valley, the two commanders began the delicate process of organizing a ceasefire. It would take time, negotiation, and probably more violence before real peace could be achieved. But for the first time in 3 years, Jake Morrison and Queen Velnara had given both species something they had almost forgotten existed: hope. The war was far from over, but it had begun to change into something else entirely. 6 months after the incident in the mining valley, Jake Morrison stood before the combined Council of Earth and Zephyria. The Great Hall was a compromise between human and Zephyrian architecture, functional metal beams supporting crystalline structures that sang softly in harmony. Representatives from both species filled the chamber, many still uncomfortable sitting so close to their former enemies. Velnara stood beside him, their neural connection now permanent and stable. The hybrid technology they had accidentally created had been studied, refined, and approved for limited use. But implementing it on a larger scale required approval from both governments, and that approval was far from certain. "The volunteer program has been successful beyond our expectations," Jake reported to the assembled representatives. 23 human volunteers and 21 Zephyrians have completed the neural bonding process. None have suffered permanent psychological damage, and all report enhanced understanding of the other species. Senator Williams from the Earth Colonial Authority leaned forward. "But what about the cultural contamination? Some of our volunteers report feeling disconnected from human society after bonding with Zephyrian partners." Elder Nathara, speaking for the Zephyrian High Council, raised a similar concern. Our bonded warriors struggle to maintain proper reverence for sacred traditions. They question customs that have guided our people for millennia. Jake and Velnara exchanged a look. This was the heart of the opposition to their program. Not fear of technological failure, but fear of cultural change. With respect, Velnara said, questioning old customs is not always a bad thing. Through the neural bond, I have seen how human adaptability allows them to survive in environments that would destroy other species. My people could benefit from learning such flexibility. And I've experienced the spiritual depth that gives Zephyrians their strength, Jake added. Humans could learn from your connection to the natural world, your respect for the continuity of life and memory. President Chen, leader of the Earth Colonial Authority, stood up. Mr. Morrison, Queen Velnara, what you've accomplished is remarkable, but you're asking us to fundamentally change what makes us human. No, Jake said firmly. We're asking you to become more human. More than human. The neural bonds don't erase our identities, they expand them. A new voice spoke from the gallery. Captain Lisa Hayes, now promoted to colonel after her role in negotiating the first ceasefire, stepped forward. May I address the council? President Chen nodded. Colonel Hayes has been observing the volunteer program as our military liaison. Colonel? Lisa approached the speaker's podium. 6 months ago, I was ready to kill every Zephyrian I could find. They were aliens, enemies, threats to human survival. Then Jake and Velnara showed me what they really were. People trying to protect what they loved, just like us. She activated a holographic display showing statistics and images from the past 6 months. Since the volunteer program began, we've had 0 combat incidents between bonded pairs and their home populations. More importantly, the mixed teams have solved problems neither species could handle alone. The display showed images of human Zephyrian teams working together, engineers and biotechnicians developing new terraforming methods that preserved existing ecosystems, military units that could anticipate threats with Zephyrian intuition and respond with human adaptability, diplomatic corps that understood both species' emotional and cultural needs. The bonded volunteers don't lose their humanity, Lisa continued. They find new ways to express it. Elder Nathara stood slowly. You speak of benefits, but what of the risks? What if these hybrid consciousnesses decide they owe loyalty to neither species? What if they become something we cannot control? Jake felt Velnara's thoughts through their connection. She was remembering their early fears, the worry that they would become isolated from both their peoples. But their experience had been different. Elder Nathara, Velnara said respectfully, I understand your concern. But our loyalty has not disappeared, it has grown. I am still Zephyrian, still bound to protect my people and preserve our sacred places. But I'm also connected to humanity through Jake, and that connection makes me want to protect humans as well. The same is true for me, Jake added. I'm still human, still committed to human survival and prosperity. But I also care about Zephyrian culture and spiritual traditions because Velnara cares about them. The bond doesn't divide our loyalty, it multiplies it. Senator Williams consulted his notes. The psychological evaluation reports mention some concerning changes in bonded individuals. Increased empathy, reduced tribal identification, tendency to prioritize cooperation over competition. Some experts worry these changes could weaken both species' survival instincts. Jake almost laughed. Senator, with respect, those aren't weaknesses. They're exactly what we need to survive in a galaxy full of other intelligent species. We can't fight everyone we meet. Eventually, we have to learn to coexist. A new voice interrupted the debate. Director Sarah Kim of the Colonial Science Council stood up. I've been studying the technological implications of the neural bonding process. The hybrid systems Jake and Velnara have developed show capabilities neither species achieved alone. Enhanced problem solving, improved pattern recognition, unprecedented multitasking ability. From a purely practical standpoint, the bonded individuals represent an evolutionary advantage. Evolution toward what? Elder Nathara asked. Toward whatever we need to become, Velnara answered. The galaxy is vast and full of challenges we haven't imagined yet. If our species remain separate, we remain limited by our individual weaknesses. Together, we become something greater. President Chen called for a recess to allow the representatives to discuss among themselves. Jake and Velnara waited in a side chamber, their connection allowing them to sense each other's nervousness. "Do you think they'll approve the expanded program?" Jake asked. "Some will. Others will fight it to their last breath. Change is never easy, especially when it requires admitting that old ways might be wrong." Through the chamber's windows, they could see the first graduating class of the Hybrid Volunteer Corps conducting training exercises in the courtyard below. Human and Zephyrian pairs moved together with perfect coordination, solving tactical problems with speed and creativity that amazed observers from both species. When the council reconvened, President Chen looked tired but determined. "After extensive discussion, we have reached a decision regarding the future of the neural bonding program." Jake held his breath. "The program will be expanded to include 100 volunteer pairs from each species. Additionally, we are authorizing the establishment of the first human Zephyrian colony world to be governed jointly by bonded administrators." Elder Nethara stood as well. "The Zephyrian High Council concurs with this decision, though not without reservations. We will monitor the program carefully and reserve the right to withdraw if cultural contamination becomes too severe." Jake felt relief flood through both his mind and Velnara's. It was not complete victory, but it was progress. A beginning. "Thank you," Velnara said, bowing to both sides of the chamber. "We will not disappoint your trust." As the formal session ended, Jake and Velnara were surrounded by volunteers from the first bonding program. Their faces showed the same mix of human and Zephyrian understanding that had become familiar over the past months. "What's next?" asked Lieutenant Tom Chen, bonded to a young Zephyrian warrior named Kale Thara. "Now we prove it works," Jake said. "We show both species that different doesn't mean dangerous. We build something new." Velnara smiled, her expression mixing Zephyrian serenity with human determination. "We become the bridge between two worlds." Outside, the sun was setting over the joint human-Zephyrian settlement that had grown up around the council chambers. Children from both species played together in the streets, already learning each other's languages and customs. It was a small beginning, but it was real. Jake thought back to that day in the canyon when he had first tried to fix Velnara's armor. He had been trying to repair damaged technology, but instead he had discovered something far more valuable: the possibility of connection across the vast differences between species. The war was officially over, but the real work was just beginning. Building trust between former enemies would take generations. But for the first time since humans had left Earth, they were not alone in the galaxy. They had partners. They had hope. And they had Jake Morrison and Queen Velnara to show them the way.